If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. So I just wanted to pull up and just have a podcast on today's show. Just talk about paradigm shift. So picture this. Imagine you're coming from work on a New York subway station that you're taking home. Long day, tired, probably bosses yelling at you, projects, deadlines were due. And you get on the train and all of a sudden you sit down and a gentleman comes in the train with 3 kids. Now the kids are loud, rambunctious, they're irritating. Everybody in the train is feeling the same way because everybody coming from different directions. They're tired. They just want to get home. Now, this gentleman comes sit right next to you. You yourself start to get irritated, start to get annoyed. And you notice it too. Everybody in the train is feeling the same way. So what do? You say, hey, excuse me, sir. You reach out to the gentleman. He sits next to you. You say, excuse me, sir. Can you please control your kids? Your kids are they're being very loud on the train. The gentleman then turns around, takes a deep breath, and then he says, maybe they don't know. Maybe I don't know. Maybe they don't know that an hour ago, they just lost their mother. Can you believe that? What just happened? You didn't turn around and say, oh my, tell me more. How could I help you? You know what just happened there? You just had a paradigm shift. Your thought process at the moment of what you perceived as he didn't know how to control his kids. But the fact that you now found out that the reason the kids are probably acting that way is because they just lost their mother. In the book, 7 Highly Habits of Effective People by Stephen Covey, he talked about a story to that nature of him. He described the paradigm shift he had on this train. We as people realize, especially in today's society, that we don't realize sometimes we have paradigm shifts too. In society, there's certain ways society sees things that sometimes we fall into that trap too. And when we fall into that trap, we have to have a paradigm shift. Our paradigm has to shift to not the way people perceive things, but the way we perceive things, the way we see things. So I thought it was an interesting concept when I read that book, because even me sometimes driving to my corporate job and I'll be behind someone and I just need to get to work, whatever it is. And people could be driving really slow, but I don't realize sometimes that person could be going through something. Me honking behind that person like a maniac doesn't help. So your paradigm has to shift. A paradigm shift is what we perceive as things to be. So I thought that was a interesting thing to share with you guys today, because when I realized that we are in society, we have a one way of thinking. The reason I'm talking about this is because think generational wealth. For you to think about generational wealth, now generational wealth is not all about money or material things. Generational wealth could be about mindset, changing the way we think, having that paradigm shift. So for you as an individual, you have to have a paradigm shift when it comes to thinking about generational wealth, because we don't think about that. We don't realize that at some point in this world, we all have an expiration date. And when that happens, what do? If you don't have that paradigm shift as of right now, because when you think about it, 97% of the population is doing pretty much what everybody else is doing. But only 3% of the population is doing something different. Why is that? Because they had to have a paradigm shift. Their paradigm have to shift to where they didn't have to be like the 97%. My virtual mentor, who I'm a big fan of, Jim Rohn, says, find out what poor people are reading and don't read it. Be like the 3%. Find out what they're doing and do it. Because you know why? Success leaves clues. So I thought it was a interesting read, just reading this book. It's one of my probably favorite books reading. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And he talks about the 7 habits. 1 is being proactive. 2, begin with the end in mind. 3, put first things first. And those habits are all what moves you from dependent to independent. Then we have the remaining, which is think win-win. Think win-win. Then he has another one. I can't think of it at a minute. Then he has, seek first, understand, then to be understood. Then synergy, which is a 6th habit. And then 7, which is sharpen the saw. Apologies, folks. But our paradigm is very important because we as a society have we have this one microwave thinking that, is just get up, go to a 9-to-5 job, go to a corporate job, let them give you a 401k, get a 401k, get medical insurance, and then work at the company, God knows how long, 50, 60 years, and then retire. But we don't realize, are we leaving wealth for the next generation and the generation after that? Because at some point, that mindset has to change. The way we think of things have to change. Our paradigm has to shift. So I challenge you today to see, are you part of what society deem as what they perceive as, how could I say, the norm? Or are you abnormal? Are you that outlier? Are you that person who paradigm shifts when everybody else has one way of thinking? And honestly, it could be at your job, it could be in your business, family, etc. Paradigm shift is something that it's a mindset. When you change your mindset, generational wealth, I'm just not talking about material things. I'm just talking about mindset. because we got to be able to change our mindset for the generations to come afterwards. Because otherwise, the same way of thinking continues. I can share a story. I remember when I was shifting careers, going from being in retail and now going into IT. I remember a moment when I was looking for a job because I didn't have any IT experience. So automatically I had a limiting belief about myself because I was like, will these people give me a chance? And it was quite frustrating experience going from interview to interview and to interview, getting rejected, I remember I went into an interview and I completely bombed it. Me and the interviewer, are looking at each other like, this is over. You're not getting this job. And guess what? I did not get the job. So I remember I got into my car. My daughter at the time was born and she was about 2 months old. And it was a very stressful moment. After taking a year off from working because I just wanted to be able to focus on me as an individual. And I was actually going to coding school at the time too. And just to drop a plug, check out calaberry.com. Those are some great guys over there. They were very helpful in my transition. But going back, just going from interview to interview was talking about getting rejected, talking about, well, you don't have the experience, are you qualified to do this job? I remember I sat in my car and I just started crying because I was like, God, is this it? Like, what's going on here? And I can remember myself just sitting there, I was ready to give up. But I had a moment where my paradigm shifted. I realized I have something that I have to keep on going. Because me being the sole provider, me being the income, at the time my wife just had a baby, so she couldn't work. I had to shift my paradigm for me to keep going. And when I did, guess what? Good things started coming. I got a job. I had got a contracting gig at that time. And I ended up getting let go from that contracting gig. But that was probably the best thing that could happen to me because that probably wasn't the best position for me at that time. So after that paradigm shift, I became more confident. I went into an interview and I just absolutely crushed it. These people were looking at me like, man, you're pretty good. I mean, the question they was asking me, because I was prepared, I was confident, I believed in myself, and I shifted my paradigm from the way I was thinking to now. So I ask you, interview, take a moment, think. What are you thinking that everyone else is thinking that is the norm? Or is it a struggle that you're fighting with that maybe you need to shift your paradigm from negative to positive? Is maybe you as an 18-year-old graduating high school this year and off to college? Maybe it's an 18-year-old that's trying to figure out what's the next step in their life. But I ask you, what paradigm shift that you need to have for you to not just think generational wealth, but also maybe abundance? Maybe you have a scarcity mindset and now you need to switch to an abundance mindset. Maybe there's a business you want to start and you're just scared because You don't know if this is going to work. The whole purpose of Think Generational Wealth and getting this message out is because I think right now, people in society, we need to have a paradigm shift, because we are not thinking right now about generational wealth. We are not thinking about the generations are behind us. So take a moment today and make that change. Shift that paradigm. And when you get a chance, if you're an avid reader, whether it's Kindle, Audible, YouTube, however you consume reading, I'll leave you with this message. Leaders are readers. Check out the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. Okay? All right? So I'll leave you out. What does people need to think? Think generational. All right, and have a good day, guys.